Advent, Christmas. No other time or season of the year reaches down into the soul and draws so much joy, hope, love, and peace. What a wondrous time. It's that time when we make that familiar journey to Bethlehem and celebrate the joyous experience of Christ's birth. The birth of a child is naturally a joyous event. The preceding months filled with great expectations and hopes and aspirations. This will be no ordinary child. This will be our son, our daughter, our grandchild. In a sense, pregnancy is like its own Advent season. Penelope and I have a beautiful granddaughter who is expecting her first child. She's so excited that she sends us continually email pictures of her developing and expanding tummy. I will never forget the first time I saw one of our children. We have 3 beautiful daughters, but I'll never forget seeing Beth Ann for the first time. In those days, fathers were not allowed to be coaches and to go into the delivery room and actually see the birth. Our Advent season was waiting to find out, would it be a boy? Would it be a girl? Finally, the word came, a girl, a wonderful baby girl. And I remember rushing down the hall toward the nursery window with great anticipation, great expectation, to gaze at this new bud of promise that Penelope and I and our God had co-created together. And I remember leaning in, watching the nurse who was holding Beth Ann in her arms and washing her as Beth Ann was squirming in protest. And I gazed in closer to see if I could discover, who did she look like? I looked at her delicate lips, her delicate mouth, and yes, indeed, she certainly had Penelope's mouth. Her eyes were crinkled. I couldn't tell what inheritance they had, and her little pink eraser nose. She certainly had thick black hair. I had made no contribution there, or perhaps because of my lack of it, too much of a contribution. But as I stood in wonder, almost frozen in wonder, my eyes began to well up and tears began to flow down my cheeks, blinding me to the feverish motions of the nurse holding Beth Ann. She was pointing at me and then down at a little clone, red-faced clone of Winston Churchill, back and forth, until finally I realized the baby boy who had Penelope's mouth and lips was not our child at all. I was the father of Winston Churchill. But friends, we need to understand that Advent, with its joy and wonder at new birth, is something that calls us toward not just Christmas and its birth of Christ, but Advent is preparation for the longer view. Advent acknowledges what already is, and yet that which is about to be. Sometimes that which surprises us, the unexpected of Christmas. In Toni Morrison's book, The Beloved, a story of freed slaves, one slave turns to the other and gives this wonderful line. Me and you, we got more yesterday than anybody. We need some kind of tomorrow. You know, every so often, a phrase just takes hold of me, and Morrison's "we need some kind of tomorrow" sunk deep into the marrow of my bones. I can imagine a great black preacher, hanky, mopping his forehead, perspiration mixed with inspiration as he rolls out that line over and over again. Brothers and sisters, we need some kind of tomorrow. And we do need some kind of tomorrow. You see, Advent calls us to a glorious morning that is expected and unexpected, a glorious unknown tomorrow, a kind of tomorrow that moves us toward a sense of joy that has staying power. Abraham Heschel puts it this way: eternity is not perpetual future, but perpetual presence. You see, Christmas and Advent calls us, in a sense, to be present, when all too often we are absent. We are absent to the beauty that surrounds us at times. We're absent to our loved ones. We're absent to others. And strangely enough, we are sometimes just absent to ourselves. And we do need, friends, then, Morrison's "some kind of tomorrow." You see, Christmas summons us and to experience and to having within our lives joy that has staying power, joy that lasts, a joy that bubbles up at times, even during some of the tragic experiences of life, that just beneath the surface, joy will have its way. Now, I'm not talking about saccharine joy, the sweet, artificial, smiling joy of some TV evangelist who wants to park life's painful inequities in a vacant lot labeled God's purposes. Joy, my friends, is not the absence of pain. We do not live in denial. It's not the absence of pain, but the presence of the divine in the midst of pain. In a sense, strange as it may sound, the joy I'm talking about is a joy that allows one to eat one's cake and have it too. You heard me correctly. To eat your cake and have it too. I didn't say have your cake and eat it too. Anyone can do that. I'm talking about being able to experience life, to eat your cake and still have it, even when tragedy threatens triumph. See, that's the some kind of tomorrow we need to move toward, the kind of tomorrow that buoys us up with life when life isn't as smooth as we'd like it to be. Isaiah, in the 12th chapter, the 3rd verse, has a wonderful line. He says, "With joy you will draw from the wells of water salvation." Now, friends, that's good news. That's good news worth proclaiming. What wonderful imagery. Thank God religion is more poetry than prose. Now, what I mean by that is, I'm not against prose, but sometimes our understanding of religion focuses on just the words, just the literal words of what religion and the stories and the narratives are about, instead of the poetry that expands its greater meaning. Paul Jones said that when the poet in each of us dies, God is strangled. In fact, when our religion becomes prose or exclusively prose, we lose our vision. When we distill our faith into neat lists and columns of do's and don'ts, when our tired definitions domesticate the mystery of the divine, wonder no longer claims us, we claim it and cut it down to size. And sometimes, friends, we do that in our journey to Bethlehem. We cut it down to size because it's so familiar to us that we do not expect the unexpected of the joy that it can spill into our lives again and again and again. Well, but the reality is, good friends, the good news of Christmas and joy is only in relationship to the bad news, and there's plenty of bad news to go around. Bad news. Bad news where we find politicians and insurance companies wrangling over health care, young lives blown away by IDEs, millions homeless and unemployed, racism, ageism, genocide, suicide. The list is endless. It goes on, and the reality is that Jesus isn't going to fix it. William Russell Maltby said, "Christianity is the heaviest of all religions." Let's face it. There's loneliness, even in the midst of this wonderful time of year. In fact, loneliness and depression are more intense at Christmas than at any other time of the year. Because somewhere, amid all the gaiety, the tinsel, the colored lights, there's the awareness of an empty chair. Somewhere, in some aged face, the memory of a loved one lost to death clings to the heart like wet snow. At Christmas time, so filled with mystery and marvel, someone somewhere is crying. At this time, somewhere in some smoke-filled dive, a solitary soul takes another shot of whiskey, trying to drown the memory of love lost long ago. And somewhere, huddled in a cardboard split level, a mother fails to keep her child's hands warm. Somewhere, in 1,000 names and faces, this time of mystery holds nothing but misery. And yet maybe that's what happens when the angels stop singing. You see, the shepherds left the stable and went back to the hillside, and the next morning the sun rose and life went back to the way it was. Kind of prose and not poetry. It's hard to envision some kind of tomorrow when the angels have stopped singing. It's hard to sing "Go Tell It on the Mountain" when life's dingy corners are dark and dreary. Well, are you sufficiently joyful? Have I cheered you all up with all this good news? Have I lifted your spirits? Can you hear the angels singing? Well, what I'm trying to actually say is that the good news of the gospel and joy does not deny the reality of life. It isn't to be found in coat-hanger smiles and sermons that preach prosperity theology. Just sign on with Jesus and all will be well. Life was not like that for Jesus, and life will not be like that for you and me. But take heart. Take heart. Joy sings its song amid the discordant notes of inequity and injustice, and it can be heard loud and clear. You see, things weren't easy for Jesus any more than they were for us. We see life's inequities, and yet beneath the surface, if the joy of the gospel comes forward. We say that Christmas should be for children, and you know what? That's true, because we're all children. I remember seeing a Christmas pageant, a very joyous Christmas pageant. Children dressed up in borrowed bathrobes and cotton batten beards and aluminum foil wings. You got the picture. No, you really haven't got the picture, because there was one father who fashioned his little angel's wings with such enthusiasm that when she came on stage, her wings span eclipsed the manger. Meanwhile, off stage was heard an angel saying, "I don't want to do this. I want to color." However, Whitney, 3-year-old Whitney, oh no, she couldn't wait to be cued to go on stage. Instead, she jumped on stage, center stage, spread her arms, spread her wings, and began to sing off-key 2 lines of someone else's solo. Meanwhile, just to make it complete, one of the wise men absconded with the baby Jesus. Maybe we just need to be less rehearsed. Maybe we need to be more like children, not follow the same old scripts. Maybe joy is found squeezing itself out of calamity. Maybe joy is found in the unexpected, the unevenness of life, where things are less predictable and yes, somewhat unsure. All right, preacher, tell me then, and tell us, what is the joy of Christmas, and what does it bring to us in terms of the great news of God's gospel? Well, first of all, let me suggest that the good news of Christmas is that God believes in us. We get it the other way around. We think we need to believe in God. But Christmas reminds us that God believes in us. When Jesus confronted that poor woman accused of adultery, about to be stoned to death, strange, only one person accused. I think adultery takes more than one person, but nevertheless, here she is. And Jesus turns to her and says, "Go thy way and sin no more." Now what I hear him saying is this. I hear him saying, I believe in you. There's far more to you than you've ever hoped and dreamed for. Life is for living. Go and live it. You see, Christmas reminds us that life is gift. It reminds us that despite what we believe about God, what we may believe about ourselves, God believes in us. God believes in you. Secondly, the good news of Advent is that joy operates in the red. Fun is for the moment. Joy has some of the eternal to it. Joy is not something you go after, it's something you are. It's something you've been given, something you share with others. It's the kind of joy experienced by the fellow who found the pearl of great price and sold all that he had to possess it. It's the kind of joy experienced by the person who found a treasure in a field and sold all that he had to possess it. The woman who found her missing coin. The joy experienced by the father running down the road to meet his prodigal son. You see, joy experienced singularly is anemic. Joy overrides economic rules. It's a spendthrift. It's always operating in the red, because joy divided is joy multiplied. Well, we also have to recognize that the good news of the gospel is that joy is life assurance. Now, I didn't say life insurance. I'm talking about life assurance. I'm talking about the fact that the joy of Christmas is that we're reminded that God loves us, not because we're good or religious or faithful or kind. The joy of Christmas is that God's love is unconditional, uncaused, unmerited, uncalculated. There are no strings attached. You see, love is not something that God does. Love is something that God is. And finally, the secret of Advent's joy and Christmas joy is, strangely enough, found in learning how to die and to live again. Resurrection. Not there and then, but here and now. You see, we think we live and we die, and we do. And we think we do them in that order. But the reality is that living and dying go on simultaneously. Every day we're dying a new death and coming alive to others and to new experiences. There are parts of us that need to die in order for more joy to enter in. We need to die, for example, we need to die to our unhealthy need for success. Sometimes we want to give our loved ones what we think they need when what they really need is more of us and less of things. We need to die to distorted self-reliance, that is. You know, we place a pride on the bondage of our own resources. We have to be big enough to be helped. Deliver me from the bondage of self-preservation. I think we need to also die to unhealthy suspicion of others. Sometimes we put people into boxes and we put them into labels, this and that, politically, sexual orientation, whatever. We put them into labels and we make judgments. And I'm saying that we need to die to that. We need to be able to look at people and give them the benefit of the doubt and recognize that they too are a child of God. We need to die to our infallibility. Some of us, in times we find ourselves having immaculate perceptions, that our view and our ideas are more than ideas, they're the only truth. We need to be willing to admit that we can be wrong. We also need to die to distorted, almost pathological worry and anger and anxiety, because worrying won't change it and fear can prevent new approaches. Well, so what do we be joyful for? We're joyful in your work. Be joyful in your work. Is it a drudgery or is it a privilege? Are you big enough for it? Is it big enough for you? Be joyful for friends who tell it the way it really is, who have the courage to confront you with the realities of your own lifestyle at times. That's a true friend. Be joyful with that friend. Be joyful with your language. Some people are bankrupt of praise. Be an encourager. Watch what you say. You're not only heard, you're overheard. For heaven's sakes, we need to be joyful with our children. Not just hear them, but listen to them. Take the time. You know, we talk about quality time. And there is quality time, but all time is quality time. We've only got so much time. Put the newspaper down, turn off the idiot box, and spend some time with your children. Be joyful for every sunrise, for every day. You know, the commercial has it wrong. The best thing about waking up isn't Folgers. It's waking up. This is the day the Lord has made. Rejoice and be glad in it. Treat each day as a great day. If you don't think it is, try missing one. Be joyful in your marriage. Fall in love again. Take your spouse to dinner. Buy her or him a card or a rose. Tell your love. Show your love. Start dancing again. Romance isn't something that happens. It's something you are. You see, Christmas reminds us that we have pinned our hopes and dreams on a God who is very, very much alive. A God who calls us to new tomorrows, a God of surprises, a God who whispers new possibilities, new dreams, even in the midst of dark days and dreary nights. A new kind of tomorrow God is calling us to, here and now. And yes, indeed, so this is the wondrous time when we make that wonderful journey to Bethlehem. Can we do that this year? Perhaps seeing and experiencing this journey through the eyes of children whose eyes are full of wonder and curiosity and imagination, who are able to look at the expected and see the unexpected. So soon the waiting is over, and soon we will arrive and we come to Bethlehem. And yes, indeed, it's a newborn babe. And we're excited. And we run down the hill as fast as our feet can take us. And there we are at the very edge of the stable, and we tiptoe in reverently. Don't want to disturb. We just want to see this newborn child because it's our child, a beautiful child. And we move forward into that experience, the reality of the dank smells of hay and animals. And we approach with reverence that manger and that feeding trough where this new child awaits us. And we come with great expectations. And then we lean over and peer in, and we see something unusual. Not the expected, but the unexpected. Not the familiar, but the unfamiliar. For we look down. Is that the baby Jesus lying in a manger? Or is it you? Is it me? Because you see, at Christmas, we share in nativity. Christ's birth is our rebirth. His nativity is our nativity. We are born again. We don't find the expected Christmas at the stable. What indeed we find, strangely enough, is we have found Easter. You see, the joy of the gospel is the power of God to pick up our lives no matter how much we've neglected them or smothered them or rejected them, and offer them back to us as gift, to resurrect us here and now, to give us some kind of tomorrow, regardless of our yesterdays. Yes, Maltby said Christianity is the heaviest of all religions. But he went on to say, Christianity is the heaviest of all religions if you have to carry it. The joy of Christmas is that you don't have to carry it. It carries you. It's the kind of burden that sails are to a ship and wings are to a bird.